The antiseptic smell stabbed into my nostrils like an invisible knife. I lay in a hospital bed, listening to the hushed whispers outside my door. Ethan still isn't awake. The doctor said he might have short-term memory loss. My wife, Chloe Vance, said, her voice laced with an excitement she couldn't quite conceal. Seriously? This is our chance. A man's voice, low and urgent. Chloe, we can finally. Should keep it down. Chloe cut him off, her tone sharp with caution. Mark, don't rush it. We do this one step at a time. My eyes were closed, but my heart had turned to ice. 10 years of marriage, 5 years of brotherhood. To them, it was all just a game. My car crash was no accident. The day before, Dave from IT had tried to warn me, stumbling over his words, that someone had tampered with my car. I brushed it off. Then I lost control on a highway ramp and slammed into the guardrail. The irony was sickening. I cracked one eye open just enough to see Chloe standing at the door, her arm linked with Mark Sterling's. She was wearing a stunning red dress, her makeup flawless. She looked less like a concerned wife at her critically injured husband's bedside and more like she was heading to a gala. Mark, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, scanned a room with a greedy gaze, as if he were already mentally calculating how to divide my assets. They hadn't noticed I was awake. On my third day in the hospital, I made my decision. I would feign amnesia. I want to see exactly what kind of game these two bastards were playing. I secretly contacted my longtime friend and assistant, Leo, and had him install hidden cameras in my house and at the office. At the same time, I began to quietly orchestrate a meticulous plan for revenge. The day I was discharged, Chloe supported me, her face a perfect mask of concern. Ethan, do you remember me? She asked softly, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. I looked at her blankly and slowly shook my head. Who am I? Where is this? Chloe gasped, covering her mouth in a flawless performance of shock and pain. But I didn't miss the flicker of pure elation that flashed in her eyes. I'm Chloe, your wife, she said, squeezing my hand. She gestured to Mark. And this is your best friend, Mark. Mark stepped forward and clapped me on the shoulder. Buddy, don't worry. I've got your back. Behind my trusting gaze was a hatred that cut bone deep. Back home, Chloe enthusiastically showed me every room, as if I were a guest seeing the house for the first time. That night, I watched the live feed from the hidden cameras. I saw Chloe and Mark locked in a passionate kiss in the living room, whispering about how to trick me into signing over my company shares, how to ensure my amnesia became permanent. Chloe, once we get Ethan's shares, we're leaving this city, Mark murmured, his hands roaming her body as he kissed her neck. Chloe giggled. You're brilliant, Mark. This car crash was a gift from God. They had no idea the show was just getting started. And the director was me, Ethan Cole. It was the 10th day of my amnesia. Mark visited frequently under the guise of concern, probing to see what I remembered about the company. Today, he arrived with a stack of documents. Ethan, these are the latest financial reports. See if they jog your memory, he said, handing me the folder, his eyes calculating. I feigned confusion as I flipped through the pages, then looked up. Mark, have Chloe and I always had a good relationship. Mark was clearly caught off guard. He recovered with an awkward laugh. Of course. You two are the model couple. I nodded slowly. And what about you and Chloe? How are you two? His fingers tapped nervously on the arm of the sofa. Just normal friends. You're my best friend, after all. Just then, Chloe walked in with a tray of tea. What are you guys talking about? Nothing, Mark said, a little too quickly, taking a cup from her. Ethan was just asking about our friendship. Oh, Chloe's expression flickered, but she quickly smoothed it into a gentle smile. Ethan, are you starting to remember things? I shook my head. No, just curious. It makes me happy to see you two are so close. The relief on their faces was palpable. After dinner, Mark left. I went into my study, locked the door, and pulled up the hidden camera feed. In the living room, Chloe was on the phone. Don't worry, he still doesn't remember a thing. Yes, the share transfer documents are being drafted. No way, we were too clean. Even if he gets his memory back, there's no proof. And if it comes to it, there's always Plan B. Plan B. What could make her so confident? I called Leo. I need you to run a full background check on Chloe and Mark's recent activities. I want to know everyone they've met with, especially anyone shady. And give me a meeting with Mr. Davies for tomorrow morning. a quiet coffee shop. The next day, I told Chloe I had a follow-up appointment at the hospital. Instead, I met with my lawyer. In a quiet corner of the cafe, Mr. Davies listened to my story, his face growing more grim by the second. Ethan, are you sure about this? Once you start down this path, there's no turning back. I gave him a cold smile. They try to kill me, and they're trying to steal everything I've built. Do I have a choice? Mr. Davies sighed. All right, I'll start preparing the necessary paperwork. By the way, I did a preliminary check on Mark Sterling. He's been meeting with some underworld figures recently. Looks like he's planning something big. Underworld figures? Who specifically? A well-known fixer. Goes by the name Rico. He specializes in making problems disappear. My blood ran cold. So, it wasn't just my fortune they were after. They were planning to get rid of me for good. When I got home, I found Chloe rummaging through our bedroom. What are you looking for? I asked. She jumped, startled. Oh, Ethan, you're back. I was just, looking for a dress. I noticed the key clutched in her hand. It was the key to my personal safe. I walked over to her, gently stroking her cheek. Chloe, I think I'm starting to remember something. Her body went rigid. What did you remember? Our first date. You were wearing a white sundress. You looked so beautiful, I said, inventing a memory out of thin air. Chloe visibly relaxed, a smile returning to her face. Yes, you remember. The truth was, on our first date, she wore a navy blue pantsuit. A simple test, and she'd validated a complete fabrication without a second thought. That night, I pretended to be sound asleep. I heard Chloe slip out of bed and leave the room. Through the camera feed on my phone, I watched her take a call in the living room. Mark. Yes, I can talk. He seems to be getting some memories back. No, I'm not sure. If he really is, we go with plan B. That's right, get Rico ready. This time, it has to be clean. I clenched my fists, my heart like a block of ice. The next morning, Chloe made a point of bringing me a bowl of special wellness broth. Ethan, the doctor said this is good for your memory, she said, her smile saccharine sweet. I took the bowl, but didn't drink from it. As I stood up, I pretended to stumble, knocking the bowl to the floor where it shattered. Sorry, I'm a little dizzy, I said, pressing my hand to my forehead. Chloe rushed to my side. It's okay, don't worry. I'll make you another bowl. As she turned back to the kitchen, I quickly dipped a finger into a puddle on the floor and transferred a sample into a small vial I had hidden in my pocket. The lab results came back that afternoon. The broth contained trace amounts of a powerful hallucinogen. Long-term use would lead to severe memory confusion and eventually permanent brain damage. And this wasn't the first time. Every glass of water I'd drunk, every meal I'd eaten since coming home, had likely been laced with it. No wonder I'd been feeling so dizzy and disoriented. That evening, I faked a severe dizzy spell and was rushed back to the hospital. The hospital's toxicology report confirmed it. There were hallucinogens in my system. Chloe put on a masterful performance of shock and worry. How could this happen? Is it a side effect from the accident? The doctor shook his head. This appears to be the result of ingestion. Her eyes darted around the room. Could it be something from a restaurant we ate out a few days ago? I closed my eyes, feigning weakness, but my mind was ruthlessly clear. Chloe Vance, Mark Sterling, you are both so much more vicious than I ever imagined. Fine, you chose this path. Don't blame me for what comes next. The revenge starts now. The fluorescent lights of the hospital hummed overhead, casting Chloe's fake concerned face in the sterile glow of a morbid pantomime. She thought I was drifting into oblivion, clueless that I was pulling every string. The moment she stepped out to use the restroom, I dialed Leo. Is everything in position? Just as you instructed, Mr. Cole. Leo's voice was low and steady. The P.I. has been on Sterling for 2 weeks. He's got a mountain of evidence. Mr. Davies is ready to move on your command. What about the Rico connection? It's confirmed. He took the job. You're the target. The client used an alias, but our informant confirmed it was Mark Sterling. It's scheduled for next week. Next week. They were going to make their final move next week. Mr. Cole, are you sure about this? Once it starts. Leo hesitated. My voice was ice. They came for my life. They should be prepared to pay the price. Execute plan, I want every part moving seamlessly. No mistakes. I hung up and deleted the call log, just as Chloe returned, her expression softening back into one of wifely devotion. Ethan, are you hungry? I can go get you something, she asked, her hand casually reaching for my phone on the nightstand. I pretended not to notice and nodded. The second she was gone, I locked the door, pulled out a burner phone, and confirmed every last detail of the plan. Plan A had 3 phases. First, evidence acquisition, proof of Chloe and Mark's affair, the conspiracy to murder me, and a deep dive into Mark's dirty business dealings. Second, the trap. Lure them into a corner so tight they would have no choice but to expose themselves. Third, public execution. Destroy their reputations so completely they would become pariahs. The private investigator sent the latest files, photos and audio recordings. Mark, in a closed-door meeting with several of our industry's heavy hitters, discussing the hostile takeover of my company. In the audio, his voice was slick with confidence. Ethan Cole is finished. He's never coming back from this. Cole Industries will be mine for the taking. Then the photos. Chloe and Mark in a suite at a luxury hotel, locked in a heated embrace, his hand sliding under her dress as she tilted her head back in ecstasy. But it was their conversation that chilled me to the bone. Chloe, once the company is ours, we're moving to Europe. We'll never have to answer to anyone again. Good, she replied, her voice cold and decisive. Rico is all set. Next Monday, Ethan Cole will disappear for good. You sure you're okay with that? 10 years of marriage, after all, Mark asked with mock sympathy. Chloe laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. 10 years. Do you have any idea how much I had to put up with? He was never around, always working. I was just another one of his assets. A pretty, hollow trophy wife. His value has been completely depleted. Value. 10 years of marriage, and in her eyes, I was just an ATM. I squeezed my fists until my nails dug into my palms, the sharp pain a welcome anchor against the rage roaring inside me. In that moment, I knew these two didn't deserve to just be punished. They deserved to be erased. The next day, I had Mr. Davies initiate the first move. He discreetly contacted a few key journalists and business partners, planting seeds of doubt about Mark's company. Rumors of financial misconduct, whispers of faulty products. Simultaneously, through Leo, I made Rico an offer he couldn't refuse. Rico was a businessman above all else. For a significantly higher price, his loyalty was easily bought. He not only handed over his entire communication history with Mark, but also agreed to testify when the time was right. And me, I continued to play the part of the pitiful amnesiac. Chloe visited me daily, bringing nutritional supplements that were, in reality, laced with poison. I found an excuse to refuse them every time. Mark showed up every other day to check on me, which was his cover for assessing my condition and floating the idea of temporarily managing the company on my behalf. Ethan, you're not well. A lot is happening at the office. Why don't I just keep an eye on things for you? He'd say, his voice dripping with false concern, his eyes gleaming with greed. I would nod blankly. Okay, Mark. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. He thought he was winning, never realizing he was walking straight into a cage of my own design. On the third day, I told Chloe I wanted to visit the office. Even though I can't remember much, I feel like I should go see it, I said. Chloe hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Of course. I'll take you. Walking into the Cole Industries headquarters, I was met with a sea of concerned faces from the executive team. They had all been bought or threatened by Chloe and Mark. If I were to recover, their careers would be over. I feigned a look of wonder. This is my company. It's so big. Chloe held my arm tightly, a public display of my fragile state for all to see. Mark arrived moments later, eagerly giving me a tour and updating me on the company's progress. Everything's running smoothly, Ethan. You don't have to worry about a thing, he said, clapping me on the back with that phony camaraderie. I nodded and gestured toward my office. Stepping into the familiar space of the CEO's suite, I stared at the awards on the wall, my expression one of pure confusion. Did I achieve all of this? Mark stood beside me, puffing out his chest. Yes, of course. Well, some of it we achieved together. I noted his use of we instead of you. The vulture was already claiming my legacy as his own. I walked over to my personal safe. What's in here? Chloe and Mark exchanged a nervous glance. Just some important company files and valuables, Chloe said smoothly. You probably don't remember the combination. Really? I mused. What is it? Mark smiled. It's your birthday, 0825. Liar. The real combination was Chloe's birthday, 1013. I nodded as if I believed him, but made no move to open it. Before we left, I accidentally brushed my hand under my desk. Just as I suspected, a miniature listening device, expertly hidden. They've been spying on me for a while. Back home, I excused myself to rest and locked the bedroom door. Taking out the burner phone, I sent a single text to Leo. Phase 2. Set the trap. The gears of my revenge were now turning at full speed. The atmosphere in the coal industry's boardroom was thick with a strange tension. Mark Sterling sat at the head of the table, presiding over the meeting as if he owned the place. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding the Hudson Yards expansion project, I believe we should increase our investment to $300 million, he announced, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the board members. No one objected. These were the same executives who once answered only to me. Now they were Mark's puppets. They all believed I was never coming back. Furthermore, Mark continued, I propose a minor personnel restructuring. The heads of our finance and tech departments need to be replaced. The board's secretary cleared her throat. Mark has. Has Mr. Cole been consulted on this? Mark waved a dismissive hand, a confident smirk on his face. Ethan's condition is delicate. He has entrusted me with full authority over company operations. These changes are for the good of the company. In reality, the people he wanted to fire were the few remaining executives still loyal to me. After the meeting, Mark held back Amanda Shaw, the director of marketing. Amanda, that $300 million for the Hudson Yards project, I need it routed through a special channel, he said in a low voice. You know the procedure. Amanda hesitated. Mark, this isn't standard protocol. Mr. Cole always insisted. Ethan Cole is a vegetable. Mark sneered. So, who are you going to follow? A broken man, or the person who signs your checks? Amanda lowered her head and nodded silently. Everything was captured by the hidden camera I'd had installed in the boardroom. At the same time, the company's stock began to fluctuate wildly. Someone was dumping massive amounts of coal industry shares, flooding the market. Rumors spread like wildfire. I hear Ethan Cole is finished, a complete vegetable. Coal Industries is about to change hands. Inside sources say Mark Sterling is taking over. Julian Croft, my biggest business rival for years, saw an opportunity and began buying up the devalued stock, thinking it was the deal of a lifetime. He had no idea he was playing his part in my script perfectly. Meanwhile, Chloe started making frequent trips to our country house, removing jewelry and cash from hidden safe. She moved the assets to a private, untraceable locker, preparing for a getaway with Mark. She didn't know about the GPS trackers I'd embedded in the jewelry or the Mark bills I'd mixed in with the cash. Every move she made was creating another piece of evidence against her. Whispers started among the longtime employees at Coal Industries. Is Mr. Cole really not coming back? I heard he has permanent brain damage. That Mark Sterling is a snake. The company is doomed if he takes over. The dissent was quiet, but it reached Mark's ears. He responded by accelerating his purge of disloyal staff and siphoning funds from the company at an even faster rate. All of this was being quietly monitored by the press. Reporters from several major financial news outlets, acting on tips I had provided, were compiling a bombshell story, waiting for my signal to detonate it. That day, Mark and Chloe came to visit me at the hospital. Ethan, how are you feeling? Mark asked, his hand squeezing Chloe's tightly. I looked at them with a vacant stare. A little better, I think. The doctors say I might never fully recover. A flash of triumph crossed Mark's face before he masked it with a look of concern. Don't worry, buddy. Chloe and I are here for you. You don't have to think about the company. Chloe nodded. That's right, Ethan. Just focus on getting better. I looked at them with gratitude. Thank you both. By the way, I asked suddenly, how is the company? I seem to remember something about a project? Hudson Yards? Mark and Chloe exchanged a look of alarm. The Hudson Yards project is going great. You don't need to worry about it, Mark said, regaining his composure. Liar. He had already embezzled half the funds. After they left, I locked the door and called Leo. Is everything ready? Yes, Mr. Cole. The stock has hit the target price, and Julian Croft has taken a bait. We have irrefutable proof of Mark embezzling the Hudson Yards funds. Enrico is standing by, ready to play his part. Good, I said with a cold smile. It's time for the next step. I pulled out the burner phone and sent an encrypted message to Julian Croft. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. The Hilton, room 2203. Bring your lawyer. Croft replied almost instantly. Ethan, is that really you? You'll find out tomorrow. Putting the phone down, I stared out the window, my heart as calm and cold as a frozen lake. Chloe, Mark, you thought I was a lamb for the slaughter. You never realized the roles of hunter and prey had already been reversed. In room 2203 of the Hilton, Julian Croft stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. Ethan, I thought you had amnesia. I smirked. Julian, the boardroom is a battlefield. You don't win without a little subterfuge. He was silent for a moment. Then the realization dawned on him. So, you've been faking it this whole time. Of course. I slid a file across the table. This is everything I have on Mark Sterling. He wasn't just planning to take my company. He was planning to take my life. Croft's face grew darker as he read through the documents. Embezzlement, corporate fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Sterling has been busy. Which means, Julian, that the stock you've been buying is about to be worthless. A muscle twitched in his jaw. Unless we work together, I finished for him, a thin smile on my lips. I need your help to corner him. In return, I'll cut you in on the real Hudson Yards project and guarantee you a handsome profit on your investment. Croft hesitated for a beat, then extended his hand. Pleasure doing business with you, Ethan. From the hotel, I went straight to Mr. Davies' office. He had stacks of files waiting for me. Here is Mark Sterling's entire file, Davies said. Proof of his financial crimes, a record of bribes, even evidence that he forged his academic credentials years ago. In this, he pushed a small audio device forward, is the recording from Rico, confirming Mark hired him to kill you. I reviewed the evidence, my resolve hardening into steel. What about Chloe? Davies handed me another thick file. She's been using your name to solicit kickbacks, all of which she's funneled into an offshore account she shares with Mark. An offshore account. They have been planning this for a long time. And there's this, Davies said, sliding a lab report across the desk. The health broth you sent over. It tested positive for a potent hallucinogen. Long-term exposure would have caused irreversible brain damage. I laughed a cold, sharp sound, and I thought she was supposed to be sophisticated. Such a cheap, dirty trick. Davies looked at me, his expression serious. Ethan, are you sure? After all, you and Chloe. We're married for 10 years. I cut him off, and in her eyes, I was nothing more than a bank account. She made her choice. Now she has to live with the consequences. Leaving his office, I drove to a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Rico was waiting for me. Mr. Cole, he said with a respectful nod. I have what you asked for. He handed me an encrypted thumb drive. These are all my recorded calls with Sterling, including the one where he gives the final order for the hit on Monday. Excellent, I said. You know what you need to do. Rico nodded. I understand. On Monday, I'll proceed exactly as planned. But don't worry, I said, cutting him off. You'll get what you were promised. Rico's tense shoulders relaxed. Afterward, I met with a few of the old guard at Cole Industries, the loyal executives Mark had pushed out. When they heard my plan, their faces lit up with grim satisfaction. Mr. Cole, we've been waiting for this day, said Frank Miller, the former finance director. That bastard Sterling thought he could get away with anything. Dave, the head of IT, nodded in agreement. He forced out so many good people and replaced them with his yes men. He was destroying the company from the inside. Don't worry, I assured them. He's about to pay for it. When I arrived home that evening, Chloe had prepared dinner. Ethan, how are you feeling today? She asked, her voice like honey, as she placed a bowl of chicken broth in front of me. I made this specially for you. It's good for your health. I looked at the soup, then up at her, and smiled faintly. Chloe, you take such good care of me. Her eyes flickered. Of course. You're my husband. I made a show of lifting the spoon to my lips, then accidentally knocked the bowl over. I'm so sorry, I said, looking apologetic. My hand is still a little unsteady. It's all right, darling, she cooed, rushing to clean it up. I'll get you another bowl. The moment she turned her back, I collected a sample of the spilled broth in a small test tube. It would be the final piece of evidence of her attempted murder. Later that night, I got a call from Leo. Mr. Cole, Sterling held a secret meeting at the office today. He's accelerating the transfer of funds from the Hudson Yards project. He plans to flee the country right after you have your accident on Monday. And Chloe? She visited a bank today and deposited more jewelry and cash into a safe deposit box. She also purchased 2 one-way tickets to Switzerland for next Tuesday. I let out a cold laugh. They certainly planned everything down to the last detail. Mr. Cole, are you certain about this? Once you. I've never been more certain, I interrupted. They wanted my life. They should be prepared to pay the price. I hung up and stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. The empire I had built, nearly stolen by a venomous snake and a faithless whore. Fortunately for me, I had always been prepared for betrayal. This time, I was going to show them what real despair felt like. On Sunday afternoon, Mark made a special trip to the house. He carried a leather-bound portfolio and wore an expression of barely contained excitement. "Ethan, I got fantastic news," he said, sitting across from me, his eyes shining. "The Hudson Yard project is officially underway, and the initial reports are incredible." I nodded blankly. "Is that so? That's wonderful." "However," he said, feigning reluctance, "the project requires a significant capital injection to move to the next phase. I'm recommending we transfer some funds from the company's main reserves." "How much?" I asked. $500 million. I didn't answer right away, pretending to rack my brain. "The Hudson Yards project. What is that again?" A flash of irritation crossed Mark's face before he masked it. "It's our flagship real estate development," he explained patiently, as if speaking to a child. "The potential return on investment is enormous." "Oh, that sounds great," I said, nodding. "But $500 million is a huge amount. I need to think about it." Mark's composure began to crack. "Ethan, timing is everything. If we wait, we can miss our window." "Mark," I said with a sigh, feigning exhaustion, "you know my head isn't clear right now. Let's do this. Tomorrow, we'll go to the office. You can explain the details to the board." Mark's face froze for a second. Then he forced a smile. "Of course. No problem. I'll see you at the office tomorrow." After he left, I sneered. $500 million. The greedy bastard had a hell of an appetite. Sure enough, less than half an hour later, Chloe's phone rang. It was Mark. Through the listening device, I heard their conversation perfectly. "Damn it, he wants to call a board meeting to discuss the project," Mark said, his voice seething with frustration. "What do we do now?" "Calm down," Chloe soothed him. "He doesn't remember anything. You can feed him any story you want. Besides, you have the board in your pocket, don't you?" "I know, but what if there's no what if?" Chloe said, her voice turning cold as steel. "We only have to get through tomorrow. Rico is ready. The day after, Ethan Cole will be silenced for good." Mark calmed down. "You're right. I'm just on edge. Will you be there tomorrow?" "Of course," Chloe laughed. "I'm the dutiful Mrs. Cole. It's perfectly normal for me to attend a board meeting. Don't worry, Mark. I'll back you up. The board knows how much influence I have." "Okay," Mark said, his tone softening. "By the way, are the tickets and passports ready?" "All set. A flight for 2, the day after tomorrow. By then, Ethan will have suffered a tragic accident, and I'll be the grieving widow, taking a trip with a dear friend to clear my head. Who would suspect a thing?" Their laughter echoed through the receiver, a grating sound that scraped at my nerves. I switched off the device. Late that night, Chloe lay in bed, watching me. "Ethan," she whispered, "do you know why I married you?" I shook my head, my expression confused. "Because you were brilliant and powerful and rich. You were everything any woman could ever want," she said, tracing a finger along my jaw. Her eyes were as cold as a snake's. "But you were always working. You never cared about me." She spoke with such arrogance, so certain that I would never remember the truth. "Mark is different," she purred. "He sees me. He understands me." I feigned a look of gratitude. "Chloe, thank you for staying with me through all of this." She smiled, completely unaware that it was the last time she would ever feel so triumphant. Monday morning, at the headquarters of Cole Industries. The boardroom. All 15 board members were present. The atmosphere was electric with tension. Mark sat in the vice chairman's seat, looking smug as he chatted with his allies. Chloe was seated in a guest chair, looking poised and elegant in a black power suit. I was the last to enter, walking slowly, my face pale, leaning on a cane. Leo and Mr. Davies followed close behind me, Everyone stood as I, the nominal chairman, entered the room. Ethan, you don't look well. Perhaps we should postpone this meeting, Mark said, his voice dripping with false concern. I wave him off. No, the items on today's agenda are too important to delay. Mark and Chloe exchanged an uneasy glance. I slowly took my seat at the head of the table, my eyes sweeping over each board member, lingering for a moment on each face. Some looked calm, some nervous, some were expectant, others terrified. I've called this meeting to discuss two things, I said. My voice was weak, but every word was crystal clear. First, the funding for the Hudson Yards project. And second, a major restructuring of the company's leadership. Mark relaxed. He thought this was playing right into his hands. Mr. Cole, regarding the Hudson Yards project, I prepared a detailed presentation, he said eagerly. The potential is massive, but it requires an additional $500 million in capital. I nodded. Please proceed. Mark stood up and launched into his pitch, a slick PowerPoint presentation full of fabricated projections and empty promises about the incredible returns the project would generate. Therefore, I recommend the board approve an immediate $500 million investment to seize this golden opportunity, he concluded, his eyes gleaming with greed. Are there any objections? I asked, looking around the room. Silence. Mark had them all under his thumb. Even those with doubts were too afraid to speak up. Excellent. In that case, we will. A triumphant smile was already spreading across Mark's face. First, let's watch a short video, I said suddenly. Mark's smile froze. Leo hit a button on a remote, and a large screen at the front of the room came to life. The video showed Mark in a clandestine meeting with a shell company operator, discussing how to launder the Hudson Yards funds through a series of offshore accounts. Once the $500 million hits, move $200 to this account immediately. We'll handle the rest after Chloe and I are out of the country. Mark's voice echoed through the silent room. The boardroom erupted in gasps. Mark's face went white as a sheet. This is a setup. That video is fake. I ignored him. Now for the second item on the agenda, the leadership restructuring. I gave a subtle nod. The boardroom doors swung open, and a dozen police officers filed into the room. Mark Sterling, Chloe Vance, you are under arrest, the lead detective announced coldly. Mark shot to his feet. On what grounds? You have no evidence. Chloe just stared at me, her face a canvas of pure shock. Ethan, you remember? I smiled a cold, sharp smile. I was never an amnesiac. The room descended into chaos. What? Chloe shrieked. You've been faking it. I rose from my chair. The weakness, the confusion, it all vanished. My gaze was like a razor, cutting straight to her soul. Chloe, Mark, did you really think I would just lie down and die? Mark lunged at me, but two officers intercepted him, pinning his arms behind his back. Ethan, you son of a bitch, you lying bastard, he roared. A liar? I chuckled. Takes one to know one. I turned to the board, my voice ringing with cold authority. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to expose a conspiracy that will shock you to your core. The screen lit up again, this time with a montage of evidence. First, videos of Chloe and Mark during my amnesia, whispering by my hospital bed, having sex in my home. Next, the audio recording of Mark's conversation with Rico, detailing the plan to have me killed in a manufactured accident. Then, the security footage of Chloe poisoning my food, followed by the official lab reports confirming the presence of hallucinogens. Finally, the ironclad proof of Mark's embezzlement, stock manipulation, and corporate fraud. Each piece of evidence was a nail hammering their coffins shut. The room was dead silent. Everyone stared, horrified and speechless. Chloe finally broke. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. No, it's not like that. Ethan, please let me explain. Mark, meanwhile, was fighting the officers like a cornered animal. Let me go. You have no proof. All of this is fabricated. Fabricated? I said, nodding to the detective. The detective produced a warrant. Mark Sterling, a search of your office has uncovered enough evidence to charge you with embezzlement, fraud, bribery, and conspiracy to commit murder. Chloe Vance, as his accomplice, you will be charged as well. Just then, the doors opened again, and Rico was escorted into the room. Mark looked as if he'd seen a ghost. Rico, what? How? Rico sneered. Sorry, Mark. Mr. Cole made me a better offer. That was the final blow. Mark completely lost it, trying to lunge at Rico while screaming. Traitor! I paid you a fortune. With that, he had confessed. Take them away, the detective ordered. As Mark was dragged out, he was still screaming. Ethan, I'll kill you for this. I'll get you. Chloe was a dead weight, practically carried out by 2 female officers. She gave me one last look, her eyes filled with a venomous mixture of despair and hatred. The room was left with just me and the stunned board of directors. Gentlemen, I said, my voice calm and steady, I apologize for the theatrics, but a certain level of house cleaning was necessary. My gaze settled on the few directors who had been closest to Mark. Some of you may have been deceived. Some of you may have been coerced. And some of you were willing participants. Several of them went pale and looked down at the table. I'm giving all of you 3 days to reflect. After that, I will be calling an emergency session to appoint a new executive board. After the meeting, I stood at my office window and watched as Mark and Chloe were shoved into the back of separate police cars. Just as I'd planned, the media was already swarming the building. The flash of cameras was like lightning in a storm. Tomorrow, this would be the biggest story in the financial world. Mark Sterling, Chloe Vance. You wanted to destroy my name and my life. Now, you will reap what you have sown. 3 days later, in a visitor's room at the county jail, Chloe sat across from me, her face gaunt and sallow, her eyes hollow. 3 days of interrogation and humiliation had shattered her former poise and beauty. I watched her without a flicker of emotion. Why? She asked, her voice a dry rasp. Why would you do this to me? I let out a cold laugh. That's my question to you. We were married for 10 years, Chloe. I gave you everything. And you conspired with Mark to steal my company and end my life. She looked down, tears tracing paths through the grime on her cheeks. Ethan, I was wrong. I know that now. I truly do, she choked out. Please, give me another chance. For the sake of the 10 years we had. 10 years. I scoffed. Did you think about our 10 years when you were poisoning my food? When you were planning my murder? I pulled a document from my briefcase and slid it across the table. Divorce papers. Sign them. Her hands trembled as she picked up the papers. Her face went ashen as she read the terms. She would walk away with nothing. Furthermore, she would have to legally admit to gross marital misconduct, forfeiting any and all claims to my assets. No, I won't sign this, she shrieked, tearing the papers to shreds. Ethan, you can't do this to me. I am your wife. I gave you the best 10 years of my life. Gave me? I laughed again, pulling another file from my briefcase. Then why don't you take a look at this? It was a complete dossier of her crimes, including the evidence of her conspiracy to commit murder, more than enough to keep her in prison for a very long time. If you don't sign the divorce papers, this entire file goes directly to the district attorney's office. You'll be looking at a minimum of 10 years behind bars. Fear flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by a desperate plea. Ethan, don't you remember when we first met? You had nothing. I was the one who encouraged you, who stood by you when things were tough. Shut up. I slammed my hand on the table. Don't you dare try to manipulate me with those fabricated memories. Who was the one who complained that I was working too hard while you were out shopping with your friends using my credit cards? Who said marrying me meant you'd have to suffer? She was cornered, the lies stripped away. You just what? I pressed. You just saw me as a meal ticket. You were just waiting for a better offer to come along. She fell silent, tears streaming down her face. But even through her tears, I could see the cold calculation in her eyes. I produced a photograph of her parents. Do they know what their daughter has done? No, she cried out, a look of pure terror on her face. Don't tell them. Please, I'm begging you. Her parents were retired, highly respected educators in their community. Her father, a former high school principal. Her mother, the head of the English department. They had built a legacy on integrity and honor. To learn that their daughter was a monster who tried to murder her own husband, it would destroy them. Then sign, I said, sliding a fresh copy of the divorce papers across the table. She finally broke, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen as she scrawled her name. Once it was done, she slumped in her chair as if her bones had dissolved. But she wasn't finished. She looked up, a sly, desperate glint in her eyes. Ethan, don't forget, I know all of your secrets. The gray area deals, the corners you cut. If I start talking, it won't be good for you either. I smiled. There was the Chloe I knew. Are you threatening me? It's not a threat. It's a negotiation, she said, her voice suddenly calm. Leave my parents out of this. Give me a payout, and I will disappear forever. I'll take your secrets to the grave. Chloe, you vastly overestimate your own importance, I said, pulling one last document from my briefcase. This is a full legal compliance audit of all my business activities, certified by 3 of the top law firms in the country. Every move I've ever made is legally airtight. You think you have leverage? That's laughable. Her face crumbled again. Save it, I said, standing up to loom over her. Chloe, this is just the beginning. As for your parents, I'll be paying them a personal visit. They deserve to know the truth. No, she screamed, lunging forward. You promised you wouldn't tell them. When did I promise that? I asked with a cold smile. I said I wouldn't give the criminal evidence to the D. If you signed. Your parents. They have a right to know what kind of daughter they raised. She collapsed to the floor, her wails echoing in the small room. Please, don't do this. I'll do anything. Anything. I turned and walked out, leaving her screams behind me. The next day, I paid a visit to Chloe's parents. I brought them everything. The videos, the audio recordings, the lab reports. Her father, the retired principal, read through the evidence, his face turning to stone before he collapsed back into his armchair, utterly broken. This can't be my daughter. His wife fainted. I'm sorry, I said quietly. The truth is often cruel. Why? Why did you have to tell us? He whispered, his voice choked with pain. Because you deserve to know, I said, standing to leave. And because she is no longer my wife. From this day forward, her life has nothing to do with me. As I left their home, I called Mr. Davies. Is it done? Yes, Mr. Cole. The divorce is finalized. I've also leaked the evidence of her crimes to the press. It will be front-page news tomorrow. Good. I hung up and watched the sun set, feeling nothing but a vast, cold emptiness. Chloe, this is only the beginning of the price you will pay. The real hell is yet to come. A week later, the headlines exploded across every news outlet. Coal Industries exec Mark Sterling faces life in prison for fraud, conspiracy, high society scandal. Chloe Vance conspired with lover to murder husband, Ethan Cole. From socialite to sociopath. The downfall of Chloe Vance, the perfect murder plot. How Mark Sterling tried to steal and empire. The stories were accompanied by the most humiliating photos of Mark and Chloe, alongside a detailed, evidence-backed account of their crimes. The public outcry was deafening. Mark's parents, unable to bear the shame, sold their home and disappeared, moving to a rural town where no one knew their name. His younger sister's engagement was broken off by her fiancé's family, citing the stain on their family's reputation. She suffered complete breakdown. Chloe's parents faced an even worse fate. Her father had a massive heart attack during a reunion with his former colleagues. He survived, but was left paralyzed from the waist down. Her mother became a recluse, wasting away in a house filled with shame. The respect and admiration they had earned over a lifetime of service to their community vanished overnight. Their prized daughter was a monster, and her sins had destroyed them. Meanwhile, Mark was living through hell in prison. Due to the high-profile nature of the case, he was in solitary confinement, subjected to grueling daily interrogations. With the evidence stacked against him, he had no defense. To make matters worse, his former business associates, eager to distance themselves, came forward to testify against him, adding even more charges to the pile. I received a message that Mark wanted to see me. Through the reinforced glass of the visitor's booth, I saw a broken man. The once dashing corporate raider was now gaunt and hollow-eyed, his hair matted and greasy. Ethan, he rasped, let's make a deal. A deal? I asked coldly. What could you possibly have to offer? What do you want? Money, power, the satisfaction of revenge. He stared at me intently. Name your price. I'll meet it. I laughed. Mark, you have no more cards to play. I do, he said, a flicker of his old cunning in his eyes. My company, my offshore assets. They're buried deep. The police will never find them. You'll never find them. Help me beat these charges, and it's all yours. You think I care about your money? It's not just the money, he hissed, leaning closer to the glass. It's the connections, the political leverage, the market monopolies you've always wanted. I stared at him in silence. He thought he'd found my weakness. Ethan, I know how ambitious you are. I can give you everything you need to break through the ceiling. Just get me out of here. Drop the charges. I smiled a slow, cold smile. Mark, you really are a fool. All these years, I let you think I was struggling, that I needed those connections. The truth is, my own network has been in place for years. The bargaining chips you think you hold, they're worthless to me. The color drained from his face. But my sister, she's innocent. She's about to get married. A little late to be thinking about her now, isn't it? I sneered. Did you think about her when you were planning to have me killed? My mother, she has a heart condition. Mark, I cut him off. Save the theatrics. You made your choices. You committed your crimes. Now, you will face the consequences. He lunged at the glass, slamming his fists against it. Ethan, you'll rot in hell for this. I swear to God, I'll kill you. Guards quickly subdued him and dragged him away, his screams echoing down the hall. I'll get my revenge, Ethan. I swear it. I watched him go, feeling nothing. His own lawyer, after seeing the mountain of evidence, had advised him to plead guilty. But Mark, ever the narcissist, refused, believing his money and connections could still save him. Then, the final nail was hammered into his coffin. An anonymous source submitted new evidence to the court, linking Mark to a major financial crime from years ago that had driven several people to bankruptcy and suicide. Mark's sterling finally broke. One night, guards found him hanging from a bedsheet in his cell. They revived him, but the oxygen deprivation had caused severe, irreversible brain damage. The man who woke up was a ghost, a vegetable destined to live out his days on life support. The court proceeded with the trial, sentencing him to life in prison, to be served in a secure medical facility. The brilliant corporate shark was now trapped in his own body, a prisoner in a living grave. Chloe's fate was no better. When she heard the news about Mark, she completely unraveled. I paid one last visit to the jail. The woman who sat across from me was unrecognizable. Her hair was a tangled mess, her face was gaunt, and her eyes were empty voids. The moment she saw me, she scrambled to the glass, her hands slapping against it. Ethan, please, leave my parents alone. They can't take any more of this. I confessed. I signed the papers. I'll do anything you want. Just leave them alone. I looked at her, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. This is the prize, Chloe. You hurt me, so I hurt everyone you love. It's only fair. She suddenly started to laugh, a strange, high-pitched sound that grated on the ears. You know, Ethan, I think I actually loved you once. But all you ever cared about was your work, your company. I was never important to you. Do you know how lonely I was, waiting up for you all those nights? Her voice turned mournful. Mark listened to me. He cared about me. He was there for me. Enough. I cut her off. Save your pathetic excuses for the judge. Ethan, she said, her voice suddenly calm and chilling. What good does it do you if I die? Mark is already gone. If I die too, your little revenge game is over, isn't it? Maybe death would be a relief. I looked at her, my heart a frozen stone. Chloe, I don't want you to die. I want you to live a long, long life. A life worse than death. I stood up and walked away, her hysterical screams chasing me down the hall. You have no heart. Ethan, you're a monster. The combination of media condemnation, her parents' suffering, and Mark's suicide finally shattered her mind. She had a complete psychotic break in her cell, screaming and self-harming. A court-ordered psychiatric evaluation diagnosed her with severe depression and delusional paranoia. The judge ruled that she was mentally unfit to stand full trial. Instead, she was committed to a high-security psychiatric hospital for an indefinite period. The day they transferred her, the once glamorous Chloe Vance was a disheveled, wild-eyed woman, muttering to herself. I didn't do it, she chanted. It was all Mark's idea. No one listened. Life in the asylum was its own kind of hell. The other patients, learning of her crimes, tormented her. The staff treated her with contempt. But the cruelest blow was that her parents never visited. Her father, from his sickbed, dictated one last letter to her, officially disowning her. That sentence was more brutal than any prison term. 6 months later, Chloe tried to kill herself by slitting her wrists. They saved her, but the massive blood loss caused permanent brain damage. She would spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair with the mental capacity of a 3-year-old, dependent on others for everything. The once brilliant socialite was now a shell of a human being, an object of pity and disgust. The story of Mark Sterling and Chloe Vance became a legend in the business world, a cautionary tale of greed, betrayal, and brutal retribution. No one shed a tear for them. Coal Industries, however, rose from the ashes stronger than ever. My decisive actions and the public perception of me as a wronged victim sent my company's reputation and stock price soaring. Mark's company collapsed almost overnight. His empire, built over a decade, vanished into thin air. That is the price of betrayal, absolute and unforgiving. On a rainy night, I stood outside a hospital room, looking through the glass at Mark. The once powerful tycoon was now just a body in a bed, kept alive by the steady rhythm of a ventilator. The doctor said he was likely still conscious, aware of everything, but completely unable to communicate. A fate worse than death. A living coffin for a decaying mind. I didn't go in. There was no need. I turned and walked away, driving through the storm to the psychiatric facility on the other side of town. Chloe was in a private room. She sat in a wheelchair, staring blankly out the window, a thin line of drool trickling from the corner of her mouth. A nurse told me she now had the intellect of a toddler. She couldn't feed herself, couldn't control her own body. The elegant Mrs. Cole was gone forever. "Are you here to see her, sir?" the nurse asked. I shook my head. "No, I'm just here to confirm her condition. How long will she live?" The nurse sighed. In her state, she could live for many, many years. "We'll take good care of her." Many years. Perfect. Death is an escape. Living in a state of endless, humiliating suffering that is true punishment. I left a check at the front desk to cover her care for the next decade. "Make sure she's well cared for," I said, my meaning clear. The nurse nodded, understanding completely. From the facility, I drove out to a small town in the countryside. Chloe's parents were living here now, in self-imposed exile. "Mr. Cole," the mother said, her voice trembling when she saw me at the door. "Why are you here?" "I came to see how you are," I said, offering the flowers and a basket of fruit I had brought. Her father lay weakly in a hospital bed set up in the living room. His eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a profound and weary pain. "Mr. Cole, we failed you. You have nothing to apologize for," I said softly, taking a seat beside his bed. "Everyone must answer for their own actions. I came today to tell you about Chloe." The old man closed his eyes, a single tear escaping and tracing a path down his wrinkled cheek. We don't want to know." "I understand. But as her parents, I believe you have the right." I told them everything, my voice even and dispassionate. Her mother sobbed into her hands. Her father lay silent, the tears now flowing freely. "I have made arrangements for her long-term care," I said. "You won't have to worry." "Mr. Cole," her father managed to say, his voice a ragged whisper, "you are a good man. You understand responsibility better than we ever did." I offered a small, non-committal smile. I drove back to the city under a sky that was turning from dusk to deep black. Everything felt different now. I returned to my empty mansion, poured a glass of expensive red wine, and stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the sprawling, glittering city below. The revenge was complete. Everyone who had wronged me had paid the price. Mark, Chloe, their families, their accomplices, all of them had tasted the bitter fruit of their betrayal. The cost to me was 10 years of my life, a so-called friendship, and a trust one would never have again. Was it worth it? I didn't know. I only knew that if I could go back in time, I would do it all again. Betrayal demands a price. That is a matter of principle. I finished my wine, walked into my study, and opened my laptop. An email from an international partner was waiting, outlining an intriguing new business proposal. I began to type my reply. Life, after all, goes on. Coal Industries, under my sole leadership, was reborn. The disloyal board members and executives were all gone, replaced by a new team of bright, ambitious, and loyal talent. The company's stock was at an all-time high. "Mr. Cole, still working?" Leo asked from the doorway. "Just a few more things to wrap up," I replied without looking up. How'd the talks with Julian Croft go? He agreed to all our terms, sir. The deal is done. I nodded, satisfied. Good. Sir, you should get some rest. You've been through a lot. I finally looked up, my gaze drifting to the window. Leo, have you ever wondered what this is all for? What any of us are really fighting for? Leo paused. To live a better life. I smiled faintly. Maybe. I stood and walked to the window. The city lights below were like a galaxy of fallen stars. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace, as if a colossal weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The thrill of revenge had faded, replaced by a quiet anticipation for what came next. The sky in the distance was pitch black, like an endless void, like a place from which there is no redemption.